This is one of the most terrifying horror stories I have ever told on this app. Not only does it involve black magic, sihr, and of course jinns, but alongside all of that is the fact that this story is ongoing, and not only that, the story in of itself, it involves so many deaths that this story is something that cannot be joked about. Save this video if you have the guts to watch this at night. Now this story, it actually starts off in the UK, and it starts with one of my closest friends and his family who decide one day that they're gonna go to Pakistan to attend a wedding. Now in the family there is my boy and his two sisters and of course their parents. So what happens is in the summer holidays they actually book a flight and they do end up going to Pakistan to attend this wedding. Now while they're actually in the wedding, for those of you who don't know how a Pakistani wedding actually goes, it's one of the most live events that you'll ever see in your life. It's very packed and there are a lot of people. So essentially what ends up happening is my friend's sisters, the older one, essentially what happens is she goes to the side and she goes to just chill out, to be honest. So now she's standing a little bit back from where all the action, of course, where everyone's enjoying themselves essentially. And what ends up happening is one of their cousins, one of their older cousins, actually comes over and starts talking to her. Now to anyone who is unaware, that would seem normal. But unfortunately this cousin was not a normal cousin. It turns out that this guy was very, very odd, to say the least. What actually ends up happening is this guy ends up asking her for marriage. Bear in mind this man is over 20 years old. The girl is literally only in year 9. Now this sister clearly clocks that something is wrong, and so the moment that this odd guy asks her straight up, "Will you get married to me?" she licks him across the face. Startled, the cousin actually ends up walking away in shame. And now I could just say the story ended there, but it didn't. Now it actually turns out that my friend's family was staying away from this cousin's family from before, and that's because amongst the family there were actually rumors that this cousin's family, his mum and his sister and him, were actually involved in a lot of black magic. Not only were they actually dabbling in the arts, they were actually quite experienced in it. And so you can kind of see where this story is going already. A girl has publicly humiliated a man whose family has a history with black magic by slapping him across the face. So essentially what ends up happening is my friend's family actually end up coming back to the UK. And what happens is they decide to move into a new house, basically when they got back. Now of course when the family get back they actually have to move into this new house. For the first week of them moving into this house, everything seems normal, there's no issues. But once this 1 week mark stops, what ends up happening is a series of unfortunate events. One night my friend is on call with all of us. When I say all of us, I mean the rest of the man. All of us on call. Essentially what ends up happening is while he's on call, he starts hearing footsteps in the attic. Bear in mind it is the dead of night. Not a single person is awake and no one has been making sound beforehand. Now you could say that it was just a squirrel, except that the footsteps were not squirrel-like at all. They were quite clearly of either a human or something very close to a human. Something mimicking a human almost. Alongside that, what ends up happening is my boy actually sees shadows in his room. In fact, he actually also sees his doors opening and closing. But what's crazy is that's not even near the worst part of this entire thing. One night me and my boy are on VC and randomly he leaves the call out of nowhere. I don't know what's happened, I just assume he's gone to sleep. What ends up happening however is when he comes back, he doesn't say a single word. He just sits there in call. Now I'm very confused, I start questioning him, like, where did you go? And he still doesn't say anything. But what he does do is he messages in the GC. Now I see this and I'm very confused, but I open his message in the GC regardless. What he says is shocking. He says that not only is he unable to speak, but he's unable to get up. And I asked him why. His reasoning was that he felt like something was grabbing his neck, something was physically stopping him from being able to breathe and speak. I ask him why he can't get up and, try to tell someone. He tells me dead straight, it feels like something is sitting on me. It feels like there's someone or something on my knees, in the sense I cannot get up physically because this thing is blocking me. Now to me this is all very concerning, don't get it twisted. But there's one other thing that I'm very curious to find out. And that is why my boy originally left the VC in the first place. Why he actually left call. And so I asked him, I said, why did you leave call though? When I tell you what he said to me is haunting, I'm being dead serious. This man tells me straight up that his sister has messaged him something. I say, what, was it something important? And he shows me 2 screenshots. In these screenshots, his sister is telling him straight up 3 things. The first, I want to kill you. The second is I want to kill family. And the third is that she wants to kill herself. Instantaneously, I clock whoever is messaging my boy is not his sister. In these scenarios, the best thing that you can do is recite Ayatul Kursi. The millisecond I'm about to start reciting, there's a crash at the door. And in the doorframe is a figure. The figure of a girl. And in her hand, she's holding something. This is part 2 of the most terrifying Jinn story that I have ever told on this app. If you haven't already seen part 1, make sure to go check it out because it is horrifying. And of course, as always, make sure to save this video to scare someone else potentially. So carrying on where we left off, the story continues and my friend is sitting down on call with me and one of our other boys as his sister has just slammed through his door, holding what is unmistakably a knife. Now, my boy shouts out loud and then he leaves the call. Me and my other friend are stunned. At first we're thinking, do we call feds, make dua for him, which we did anyway, or do we just recite Ayatul Kursi for ourselves because now both of us are terrified. We sit there waiting in cool for a solid 10 or 20 minutes. Eventually, to break the silence, me and my boy, we carry on talking. As we're mid-conversation, our boy joins back. But something has changed completely. Before, he couldn't speak and he also couldn't get up. And this stayed the same. However, there was one difference. And that was that he was heavily breathing. Not only that, but his sister was now sitting beside him. He messages that he blacks out and he doesn't remember what happened. All he remembers is that he somehow got the knife out of her hand. And now she's come back to her senses and they're both sitting next to each other. The best thing in these situations is to instantly start reciting surahs of the Quran. If not that, at least do your duas. So what I start doing is I start reciting. The moment I'm about to start reciting for the second time, my boy and his sister both hear something at the exact same time, which sends chills through their spines, and me and my other friend who are in call, we sit there in shock as well. What they hear is a deep laugh, a cackling of some sort. As I'm reciting, my boy messages me this in the group chat. I read it, but instead of stopping reciting, what I do is I start reciting louder. And on my boy and his sister's side, the laughing starts getting louder and louder. Not only that, they start hearing the door opening. Both of them are sat in complete fear and they are frozen. As I finish Ayatul Kursi, I start reciting Surah Nas and Surah Falaq, both in repeat. Simultaneously, they keep hearing the opening and closing of doors, and now they're hearing footsteps all around their house when everyone is asleep apart from these two. The situation could not be described as more terrifying. Eventually though, what ends up happening is, it stops. The adhan for Fajr eventually comes round. My boy says that his grandma will probably wake up very soon and then come into their room to of course wake them up for Fajr. So you could say we got saved by the bell. The next day, my boy, his sister and his family, they go to an imam. They of course have told their parents about the events that took place that night. The imam actually does end up performing ruqya on not just him, but his sister. As he has performed this, a shocking truth comes forth. And that is that the jinn that was inside his sister, and it was a jinn, it was quite clear, but the jinn that was actually inside his sister was placed there on purpose. It was sent to the house on purpose. And the purpose came from the sole reason of revenge. The imam comes to the conclusion that somebody has set this jinn onto their family. And while there are suspicions on his end who it may be, for the family, they knew instantaneously who had done this. A family that I mentioned all the way at the start of the story. A family who had a history of dabbling in dark arts and black magic. It was the initial cousin and his family that had commanded this jinn, had given the order for it to take possession of the sister. This is part 3 of the most terrifying jinn story that I've ever told on this app. Make sure to save this video to scare someone else potentially. Now this story continues from where we left it off, with the shocking truth that the possession of my boy's sister, the laughing in his room, and the jinn appearing itself was all due to revenge, and revenge from the cousin himself, the cousin who got wronged in his eyes so many days ago. Now after the imam gives out his final verdict and his final statement of this is what is happening, this is what's happened to his sister, he's confirmed that it's a jinn. He actually describes the type of jinn that it is, and I warn you my peoples, this is a real jinn, this is not a joke. The jinn that had actually taken possession of his sister, causing her to do all these acts, was a jinn by the name of an ifrit. An ifrit, for those of you who don't know, is the strongest class of jinn that exists, and it is very much real, and it has a very fiery nature to it. It's very aggressive and it's very dangerous. Now my boy returns home and his family do as well. After he finds out the news, he feels like the best thing to do is to tell the people who are closest. So now the man in call with our boy. Now he gets on voice call and he explains all of this to us. Now as he's explaining what happened during the ruqya and how it all went down, as I'm sending the du'as that my family have told me to send to him, he leaves the call abruptly. Now me and the rest of the mandem know better than to just simply leave ourselves. We know that there's a very high chance that he will join back, but we're hoping that it isn't with bad news. So when he does join back, and we hear the same heavy breathing that we heard the day before, we instantly knew something was up. Our boy is once again unable to speak, It's almost as if he's seen a ghost, or in this case, a jinn. Now our boy describes to us through the GC that what he has just seen is a jinn, a shadowy black figure. But what's crazy is it did something. He said that he saw the jinn turn into certain people. He says that he sees 2 of his close friends and he sees a bunch of his cousins all falling dead, all themselves in front of his face. And I don't really get scared often. That terrified me. The fact he's just told us he's seen his close friends and his cousins drop dead in front of his eyes. All we could do was dua and hope that nothing happened. Except something did happen. In the next few weeks, a series of events happened. The first is that one of my friend's close boys, he passes away. And by no coincidence, it was the same friend that the jinn showed him dying first. It was an abrupt death, and when it did come, my friend was of course devastated. In the days following, another death occurs. But this one, it almost sealed the chance of this all being a coincidence. The cousin who had gotten married, and the wedding for which my friend and his sister attended, the same wedding in which they met with the cousin doing all of that black magic and all of that dark stuff. The cousin whose wedding it was, he passed away as well. And what's terrifying is that his wife also passed away with him, almost seconds later. This was now 3 deaths. Now this could no longer be seen as a coincidence. Something was going on. If I'm not mistaken, it was a night before that my boy saw the jinn again. And once again, it took the form of somebody dying. And that was another one of his cousins. And what happened the next day is that same cousin, he passed away himself. He returned back to Allah. This story is not a joke. As I mentioned before, it is ongoing.